Hey everyone, I just wanted to create a quick tutorial over the open support bracket on your homework. I know a lot of you have been having problems with it. It is one of the more difficult parts because we have to deal with center lines, multiple arcs that include a lot of relationships. We're introducing the center point arc, and I'm also going to show you how to mirror the entities so this part is equal on all sides. So to begin, go ahead and open a new part document. Make sure your part window is in inches. Our instructions say we only need a 2D sketch, so we're not going to create an extrude feature from this. We're just sketching it. But we do need a sketch on the front plane. So go ahead and select that front plane and bring it normal too. Remember, always bring your planes normal to you so you're looking and sketching perpendicular to the plane. Go ahead and open a new sketch, and I'm going to just select the line segment. Remember to always sketch from your origin so you are connected to a point in space. So I'm going to begin by just sketching a straight line here. Then I want a tangent arc. Instead of selecting a new sketch icon, I'm just going to do the shorthand. So bring my line segment back to that endpoint and then around, and I get that nice tangent arc. I have another straight line up here, and then I need one more tangent arc, and then I'm going to stop with the sketch. Make sure they are going in the directions that you want. They don't need to be perfect at this point though. Now I'm going to go back to my line segment. So I just made the basic outline sketch of the top of that handle. So go back to your line segment, click down. Instead of selecting the line that we've been using, this would be referred to as an object line. It gives us these nice solid lines and creates our actual sketch. We're going to select center line. You'll notice when I place it down, I'm going to just connect it to my origin and bring it straight out, kind of to here, because I'm going to utilize the endpoint of it later on. But you'll notice that it has just dashes. This is our center line or construction line that we can use as a reference point. Having it within our sketch is not going to affect any of our sketch relationships, or if we wanted to extrude this part, it wouldn't affect any of those features either. Where if we were just using that solid line that I used to outline this top of the handle and the rest of the part, the object line, if we put it in the center and then try to create an extrude feature from it, we would have a problem because we would have intersecting contours then, a sketch within a sketch, which you cannot have. So when you need a reference point or reference geometry, you always want to use your construction lines or center lines because you can reference dimensions from them and how other lines lay and add in relationships, but they don't affect the overall feature or design of the part. So once we have our basic beginning outline and our center line, make sure that you have all these relationships that are showing up. So you should be connected to your origin, so have a coincident relationship from the endpoint of one of your lines. It doesn't have to be your straight vertical line. That line should be vertical. We should have a tangent relationship between that arc and our vertical line, a tangent relationship on the other side, another relationship that SOLIDWORKS automatically put in because I sketched on those guidelines, and then another tangent relationship, as well as our center line is also coming up with a horizontal relationship. If for some reason you didn't get two tangent relationships because you didn't line it up, that's fine. We'll just act like I didn't have it. I want you to go ahead and select that arc, hold down your control key, and then select that line segment. And you're just going to add in that tangent relationship and hit OK. From here, I'm just going to create some basic dimensions. So my first dimension, I'm going to select this top line segment and then my center line and bring it out. And this is going to be the 0.45 that's shown. Your dimensions do not have to line up the way that they do on your drawing. If you want them to, you can come over here on your Dimensions tab, go to Leaders, you can do a custom position and change that so they are lining up correctly. You can change how your leaders are displayed, but we'll get more into that when we start doing our drawing and documents. Next, I'm going to dimension this top arc, which I can read from the shorthand 2 times the radius of 0.22, that both my arcs here are going to be the same, so it's going to be 0.22. So this bottom arc that will eventually be here will have the same radius. Then my inner arc right here has the radius of 0.15. So far I've just dimensioned what I have sketched. So I'm going to come up here to my circle sketch icon. I'm just going to place 2 circles. Make sure your midpoint is on that center line just so you don't have to add in another relationship because we're attached there. I'm going to add in one relationship where I hold the control key down, select both my circles, and have them be equal to each other. So now I only have to dimension one. So I'm going to smart dimension. The diameter of these circles are 0.60. Next, I'm going to dimension from the midpoint to the end line segment. This gives me that dimension of 0.60 as well. The midpoint to this end line segment is that 1.5. I'm going to hit OK. Since I know that this line segment comes out further, I'm going to just drag it out. If your curve gets too crazy, you can just bring it back around. It's not a huge deal right now. So far we're looking pretty good. I'm just going to zoom out so we can see a little better because now I'm going to start adding in my arcs. Okay, so we technically have 4 arcs. You can see this tangent curve. It kind of looks like it goes into a straight line, but then in our drawing we see another arc right about here in the end of that handle. That is just showing that we're actually using a center point arc right here. So this tangent line goes into a center point arc and then tangents around. So I'm going to add in all my center point arcs right now. So go to your arc icon, go to center point arc. Now you can see when you're choosing your arc type, it shows you what points you're going to list first. So we're going to select where we want our midpoint and then our 2 endpoints. So in this picture of your homework, all your radius and other dimensions are calling out your midpoint, which appears to be about right here in between your 2 circles. So I'm just going to select that down. Now I'm going to start with just this first line segment. So I think it's about right here, and then it's going to come around. So that's that arc I was talking about. That kind of looks like a straight line. Now our second line segment, I'm going to go back to that midpoint and I'm going to use this for my midpoint on all the arcs. So now this is going to be the bottom arc on this interior cut. Once again, go back to that midpoint. This is going to be the top arc on that interior cut. And last, go back to that midpoint, and this is going to be the top of our guide support. See how it wants to go backwards? You want to make sure that you're coming in the right direction. And hit OK. So now we have all 3 of those arcs. So make sure your midpoint is coincident with your center line, which it is. Now we want to make sure all of our midpoints for these arcs are coincident with that line as well. So just hover over where you think they're going to be. SOLIDWORKS will automatically have them pop up. Hold down Control in that center line and hit coincident. Then hit OK. We're going to do that for all 4 of them. So go ahead, add in that relationship. You can drag out your center line if it is shorter than you want it to be. And for this one, I'm actually going to have the endpoint of my center line be the one that becomes the coincident relationship to the midpoint of this final arc. Make sure you select the arc. I kind of have two arcs going on because I accidentally copied it, so make sure you don't do that. Select the midpoint, the endpoint of that center line, make them coincident, it snaps together. Just because it's cleaner, and now we can add in different relationships as well. So we also want to connect the endpoint here to this bottom arc. So you can grab the endpoint and drag it and wait for that relationship to kind of pop up like it is, like SOLIDWORKS does. Hit OK, and now we don't have to add it in, but we are connected there. Now you can come up to your Trim Entities tool. This is really handy for things like this where we needed an arc. So you can select the down arrow, go to Trim Entities. I'm going to use the Power Trim option. Then I'm just going to swipe through the line I want cut and hit OK. So it gets rid of that, but now I still have that nice arc coming up to my tangent line. I also want to make sure that my endpoints match up. So you can do that by zooming in, and that this arc has a tangent relationship to the arc we just cut. So add in that relationship as well. It's going to be tangent just so it always has that nice rounded curvature. So you should have something that looks like this right now. Don't cut this line yet. So I'm hooked to my center line all the way through. I have all my arcs attached and everything's lining up nicely. Now let's go ahead and add in the dimensions of these arcs themselves. So I'm going to start with this bottom one. Its dimension is listed as 1.58. My middle is listed as 1.88. The top of that interior cut is 2.70. And then the final arc we have as 3, and hit OK. So now you can see everything's lined up neatly. Go ahead and select all 5 of these arc lines now, since we already trimmed that away, and make them concentric to each other. So that means that spacing is always going to be equal, and hit OK. Now I'm also going to add in one more construction line. So I'm just going to select my center line again. I'm going to draw it from that same midpoint I've been using. And this time I'm going to bring it up to about here. And just place it down. This is going to come into play when I finish up my interior and outside line cuts or line segments, and how I'm going to put in that 30 degrees. So let's go ahead and grab our line segment, and I'm going to start with the outside here. So hit that endpoint. Remember, we need another tangent arc here, so go back to the endpoint, create a tangent arc, then we have a straight line, then we have another tangent arc connecting them. Same thing with the bottom. We come from this arc we've already created, we have another tangent arc, a straight line, and then a tangent arc. And hit OK. So zoom in, and we're going to start on the outside. Make sure we have a tangent relationship on both sides of the arcs we just put in. So I need one on this side. So hold the Control key down, select both those line segments, select your tangent arc relationship, I'm going to get rid of this coincident relationship that SOLIDWORKS automatically put in. Sometimes we don't need the automatic ones. So we don't want to have any that we're not really paying attention to because it will mess this part up. Okay, I have a tangent arc here, or tangent relationship. I need one on this end, so select both those arcs this time, hit tangent, and OK. So you can see that flows smoothly together. I need to do the same thing to these interior arcs. So I'm going to add in a tangent relationship here, and one between these two top arcs. Now that I have this line sketched, I'm going to add in one more relationship. I'm going to select the solid line I have sketched here, hold down my control key and select the center line. This time I'm going to select the collinear relationship, so those lines lie right on top of each other. You can also move your endpoint down to connect to this endpoint, just so you have a cleaner line. I'm also going to add in a relationship between the outside straight line segment and my interior straight line segment for those two lines to be parallel with one another, and hit OK. Now go in and we can read on our drawing the shorthand of 4 times the radius of 0.30. That means all these outer corners are going to have the same radius. So you can smart dimension just one of them. I'll smart dimension the top one just so we can keep the dimensions a little clean. 0.30. Hit OK. Now I'm going to add in the relationship that this arc, hold my control key down, and this arc are equal. I'm going to add in that same relationship too to these interior arcs, that they're equal to each other. And now I'm going to smart dimension this top interior arc, which you can see another shorthand on your homework is 4 times the radius of 0.15, and hit OK. And I'm just using the smart dimension tool each time. Now I'm also going to smart dimension the width between these two line segments. Remember, you do need to make them parallel before creating this dimension, just so the dimension comes out straight and not at an angle, and is the true width. And this width is 0.30. You can read that on the bottom homework. Okay. So you should be attached as well to that center line by the arc endpoint. So if it's not, you can select it, hold down control and select that center line, make the coincident relationship. I already have it connected, so it's saying I'm over defined. So now we want to add in that 30 degrees, and that's where our two center lines are going to come into play. So go ahead and go back to your smart dimensions. Remember, when adding in an angle, you need to select the two line segments you want the angle in between. So select both of your center lines and drag that out. It's going to be 30 degrees and hit OK. So in the beginning, when we started dimensioning our circles in the first part of our handle, we left off that 1.12 dimension. Let's go ahead and add it in. So go back to Smart Dimension. You can zoom in. We're going to dimension the midpoint that we've been using for all of these arcs to the end line segment. Remember to select the line segment and not the midpoint of it, because you'll just be in trouble then. This dimension is 1.12. And hit OK. So if you're reading from the left over on your homework, you'll see we have all the dimensions that have been given to us. By adding in that 1.12 dimension and giving my midpoint placement, the rest of my drawing has now become fully defined. So now the cool thing, so we only had to draw one side. and dimension it all. So let's go ahead and mirror it. So go to under your sketch tab, go to your mirror entities icon and work your way down on your feature tree manager. So to begin with, what entities do you want to mirror? So I want to mirror this straight line, my arc. I'm just going to go around the whole outside of my part. I do not need to mirror this line, however, but you can if you'd like, because I do have it still here. I'm going to select it just so you guys can see. I don't need to select this outer line or this line because they both go to each side. I'm actually going to unselect that. So you can see I've just selected all these top outer lines besides the arcs I've already created. Now mirror about. This is another point where your center line comes into play. So select your mirror about, select that center line. You'll see just a preview of where those lines are going to be and hit OK. Now you get all these crazy squares pop up for relationships. That's just showing that we did mirror those entities. So come back in because we do have these extra lines. Go to your trim entities icon, select it, make sure power trim's there, and just drag your mouse through these extra lines. And now we have a nice clear sketch that's fully defined. You can read on your status toolbar that it is fully defined. There is nothing blue. If we were to create a feature, we could extrude this base, say 1/4 of an inch, and hit OK, and look just like our homework part. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Remember, you don't need to create the extrude. We only want the sketch for this homework. So the key to this is using the center point arc to create all 4 of these arcs, using our trim entities to cut away this extra arc line, and using our center lines for reference points to add in where our angle's going to be. Also, make these lines parallel to one another. Make sure that center line is attached to the endpoint of the first arc we put in, as well as the endpoint to this tangent line, because those also need to line up and have that 30-degree relationship too, to give it that symmetrical look. Good luck!